The Eagles stagger into the playoffs like Jim from Taxi, but they may have lucked into a good playoff draw starting Monday night in Tampa Bay. Sal Paolantonio in the quarterback play, handling the blitz, and also all the wild card matchups. Sean Green looks at Super Bowl odds and weekend spreads, including a freezer bowl in Kansas City. Anthony Gargano joins us to talk whether the Philadelphia can make a deep playoff run. And Coach Dick Vermeil rounds out the show talking about Nick Sirianni and playoff football. That's all right now on a Wildcard edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for a wild card edition of This Week in Pro Football, and I have lined up a Hall of Fame-worthy lineup for you tonight. So I want you to make sure you join me for the entire 80-plus minutes here on JAKIB Sports. Please give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. I've got Schmidt-Luzinski here. Sal Paolantonio going to be joining in just a few minutes. Bookended at the top of the next hour by Coach Dick Vermeil joining me. So I've got lots of questions lined up for both of these Hall of Famers to discuss the Philadelphia Eagles primarily, and what the hell happened, to quote Vince Lombardi, to a team that was 10-1 and is staggering into the playoffs at 11-6 after getting, to use Sal's term, boat raced by the New York Giants the last week of the season. So lots to talk about there about the Eagles as they get ready. I mentioned, though, I think the Eagles kind of lucked out here. The fact that they're playing in Tampa Bay, Tampa coming off a really decisive 9-0 victory over the 2-15 Carolina Panthers. I don't think Tampa Bay is certainly unbeatable. I think the Eagles may be in a better position playing on the road at Tampa than they might be facing at home a resurgent Green Bay Packer team. We'll talk to Sal Paolantonio about that in just a couple minutes. Anthony Gargano going to join for the first time on this show, and a long time radio voice from 97.5 The Fanatic and WIP before that. And, of course, Sean Green in his usual spot will get you up to date with odds and props. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the playoff schedule here. We're finally done 18 long weeks of the Frog March of the NFL regular season, and all of these matchups are set. The Ravens and the 49ers, of course, with the much coveted buys, even though it doesn't guarantee you a Super Bowl, but recent Super Bowls indicate that the one seeds heavily favored to make it through the bracket. The AFC, you've got the usual AFC South lineup at 4:30 Saturday. The least coveted television viewing lineup always goes to the AFC South champion. That's the Houston Texans this year hosting Cleveland. Should be a good game, though. Should be a competitive game. I can't sleep on the Browns if Joe Flacco continues the run that he is on. Later that night, 6th seed Miami, which lost to Buffalo Sunday night and is decimated by injuries to key players, travels to Kansas City, -5 at kickoff at Arrowhead Stadium. The NFL could care less what that means to anybody attending the game. Of course, it's the Saturday night game. It's also behind a paywall. You're going to have to pay if you want to watch that game. It's on Peacock. And that's very debatable, that NFL strategy. Not a big fan of that at all for a league that prints money whenever it feels like it, but they printed it here. So if you want to see that game, you got to pay. Sunday, you've got the early game, Pittsburgh at Buffalo. I don't think the Steelers are going to offer much to the Bills there. Too much disparity at quarterback. The NFC, we're going to talk plenty about Philadelphia visiting Tampa Bay Monday night. That, of course, is it's a marquee game here, marquee game in Philadelphia. Can the Eagles get the ship righted? We'll talk to Sal Paolantonio about that in just a couple minutes. The surprising Los Angeles Rams, who at one point were 3-6 and finished 10-7 on the year, traveled to Detroit. Interesting angle there. Matt Stafford, after all those years, just getting bashed as the quarterback of the Detroit Lions. Lo and behold, The Lions' first home playoff game in 30-some years. And who's coming back to Detroit? Matt Stafford. That should be a good game Sunday night. And then the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's the annual run of the Cowboys to see if they can finally make a deep run in January. And it starts off against an opponent that could give them some trouble. I'm a little surprised. We'll talk to Sean Green about it. Cowboys a 7.5-point home favorite there. Of course, they're a much different team at home. But I don't know. Packers are playing very well right now. And that kid at quarterback he's coming on pretty strong. And we'll see. We'll see if the Cowboys can decisively handle Green Bay or not. That game could be closer than many people think. All right, Sandra, thank you very much. Just one word before we bring Sal on, and that is Bill Belichick today, along with Robert Kraft, mutually agreeing that Belichick would step down after 24 years as the coach of the New England Patriots. One notable stat, in the 24 years that Bill Belichick was the coach of the Patriots, the other 31 NFL teams hired 163 coaches. So that just goes to show you. You talk about staying power. Belichick, his career record, 333 and 178. He's 15 shy of passing Don Shula for the all-time wins record, and he wants it. Belichick will keep coaching. And it's very interesting to see where he's going to go. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, nationally, there's a lot of talk whispering about Philadelphia as a potential landing spot for Belichick should the Eagles make an early exit. Also Dallas. Belichick, though, he's 9 Super Bowl appearances. He's 6-3 in them in 24 years. Not bad. And he wants, as I said, he's going to keep coaching. He's already won 17 division titles, 12 Super Bowl appearances overall, including 3 as an assistant coach with the New York Giants. So big news there. And, of course, the usual coaching openings. A little surprised Seattle. They asked Pete Carroll to step back. Carroll will just be an advisor now for the Seahawks. So some serious coaching resumes left their offices this week in Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick. Also, Mike Vrabel, a surprise to many that Vrabel was let go in Tennessee. But we'll have time to talk about these as the playoffs move along. I'm not surprised that Vrabel really moved along. Tennessee wants to get to the Super Bowl. Mike Vrabel has not gotten him close, quite frankly, in the 10 years, or the number of years he was there. So, but lots of coaching openings, the usual 7-8 coaching openings. It's that way every single year. All right, Z, let's bring this gentleman on here, the longtime host of the NFL Matchup Show and the national correspondent for ESPN, the great Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how are you?
Pat, it's Super Wildcard weekend, and I am pumped up. Philadelphia Eagles are going to play on Monday Night Football in Tampa against the Bucs. It really doesn't get any better than this. Back to the scene of the crime. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. It's a great weekend, an absolute great viewing weekend, unless you're a Kansas City Chiefs season ticket holder. Then it's not that great a weekend. But it's great viewing. I think they all could be really good games, Sal. And later on with Sal, I'm going to name each game and get a comment from Sal as to what he thinks the key to each of those games is going to be. Look forward to doing that. But for now, Sal, let me just start with this. Okay, please. Just give me your 2 paragraphs on how a 10-1 team becomes an 11-6 team. And more to the key, Sal, is after what you've seen the last few weeks, is the trend reversible?
Oh, those are big questions. We could have a TED Talk on it, but I'll give you my best short answers, Pat. I think it is reversible if they go back to playing the style of football that they're capable of playing. So a brief story. In the bowels of Giants Stadium, MetLife Stadium, after the game on Sunday night, I waited for Lane Johnson as he came out of the locker room. I've known him a long time. And I said, Lane, how do you fix this? I didn't say what went wrong. I didn't say anything about the past. I said, how do you fix this? What do you do? And he basically said to me, you're looking at him. He said, we got to lean on our strength. We got to lean on our offensive line. We got to go back to what we can do as a running football team, a team that runs the football, and he said plays play action off of it. It's a simple formula. It's the formula that allowed them to beat the Bucs in September on Monday night, 25-11, when they had 40 carries. DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and Jalen Hurts. They need to run the football in this game more than ever. The Bucs have the best defensive player on both sides of both teams. Antoine Winfield Jr., their free safety. He takes the ball away and he sacks the quarterback on safety blitzes. You want to make him nose around the football. Get him to the line of scrimmage. Get him playing the run. Run the football. Use heavy packages if necessary. Number 2, Pat, watch the weather report. It's supposed to rain really badly on Monday night. Ticket prices on the secondary market are plummeting. You can go to the game from Philadelphia right now. Airfare, hotel, and ticket for $370.
Wow.
So It's going to be raining, and you beat the team running the football the last time, and the offensive line wants to take over, and your quarterback hasn't thrown the football since Sunday because of a dislocated finger in his throwing hand. It all adds up to doing the smart thing. So, yes, it is reversible.
Okay.
And I think it's a matter of approach. And listen, you got the cuz and the coach on this show. I don't even know what I'm doing leading off on this show.
You're leading off.
Pat, this is an all-star crew. You got the cuz and the coach. Come on now. Those guys are going to tell you the same thing. The other thing is, in this game, remember this, Pat, and I sent you these notes earlier in the week. Baker Mayfield has been sacked 40 times this year. That's the most of any quarterback entering the playoffs. Sometimes he can hold the ball too long.
Right.
Sometimes the pass protection breaks down. You can get to Baker Mayfield if you shut down his first and second reads, Evans and Godwin.
All right.
So you need to play matchup zone on defense, and you need to run the ball on offense.
All right. Let's digest that, Xander. Let's get to our first break here. And Sal, when we get back, you were kind enough to send me those notes. I want to rattle off, though, because you just mentioned a blueprint for how they win the game offensively. But minus 59 points in the last 6 weeks. I want you to tell me when we get back how the hell they're going to do it defensively. So let's do. We'll take a break. We'll bring Sal Pao back. We'll talk about when the Tampa Bay Bucs have the ball here on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Back to This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Pat Callahan here, along with the excellent Sal Paolantonio from ESPN, the host of the longest-running sports show, that being the NFL Matchup Show. Check it out Saturdays and Sundays on the ESPN networks. All right, Sal, I mentioned before the break, the Eagles' defense has given up, I think, has contributed mightily to the Eagles being a minus 59 in points over the last 6 weeks. You were kind enough to send me these notes showing that these are the Eagles' defensive ranks since week 13. Points per game, 31st. Yards per game, 30th. Third down percentage, 30th. Red zone percentage, 30th. So how do we turn that around? You've already diagnosed the offense. What are the Eagles going to do defensively to get back past these last 6 weeks?
It's Evans and it's Godwin. So when you see Baker Mayfield drop back, I don't know how much they're going to pass the ball. Again, the weather's supposed to be pretty bad. And Todd Bowles has tried to play field position football because Baker Mayfield has had a dodgy ankle and some really painful ribs. They've only scored 22 points in the last 2 games. They did not score a touchdown against the Carolina Panthers, winning that game 9-0. So Bowles has dialed up the run game and a heavy blitz defense against Bryce Young and the Panthers, and they got out of Dodge with the division title. That they can do that against the Eagles, I don't know. I kind of like the Eagles in this game. I like the Eagles in this game because I think across the board they have more talent and they have an offensive line that can dominate. So you got to play matchup against Godwin and against Evans. Jam them at the line of scrimmage. Teams that have been successful against the Bucs have done that, like the Saints. And then you rush Baker Mayfield up the middle so that he can't step up. The Saints did it to perfection twice.
Right.
And then you corral him and you sack him and you give him no escape. When he's on the run, he's got that movable pocket. He's got clear vision. Evans and Godwin can get past the initial bumps in the secondary. That's where he makes his money. That's where Baker Mayfield has always made his money. He did it with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, and he's doing it with Dave Canales, now the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. So in my view, that's the way to beat them because they're not a great running team.
Right.
They're not going to light it up in the running game.
Right.
If Baker Mayfield doesn't turn the ball over, the Eagles will have a hard time beating this team because that defense is good enough to stop the Eagles if the Eagles decide that they want to throw the football all over the big sombrero.
Okay. All right, Sal, back to the offensive side of the ball, the notes that you sent me. I noticed in here the Eagles offense is the most predictable in the NFL, according to these notes. We use pre-snap motion on 26% of plays. The league average is 51. Why have the Eagles become so stilted in their offensive presentation?
Pat, the league average for using motion pre-snap is double what the Eagles do. The league average.
Right.
That's it. The Eagles are not vanilla on offense. They're generically vanilla. They're the vanilla that you get in the back of the freezer at the grocery store. It's not Breyers.
Right. It's not Breyers. It's
a generic vanilla.
Yeah, I got it.
So, a player after player that I've talked to, former players, have used this term. It's a high school offense. It's very easy to predict.
Wow.
And that, to me, is a big problem. Yep. It's a big problem in the passing game. There's another number there. Both of those numbers come out of the film study at NFL Films. But the number that is really shocking to me, Jalen Hurts has 38 throwaways. He's thrown the ball away 38 times this year. Second only to Bryce Young, a rookie who basically did nothing in the NFL.
On a 2-15 team, right. Yeah.
He's second to Bryce Young in throwing the football away. That means one option's not open. He evacuates the pocket. You've seen it over and over again. He goes to the sideline. He's throwing the ball into the second row of the stands.
No question. And your colleague, Dan Orlovsky, did a couple of really excellent breakdowns of pass plays in the Giants game in which he ended up throwing the ball away because it didn't seem like they were on the same page, Hurts and his receivers. You mentioned in the notes here, he was the 4th most blitzed quarterback in the league this year. Now, you tell me, with the way you describe Todd Bowles, are there any plays in this game in which the Buccaneers won't blitz Jalen Hurts, and you think the Eagles will be ready for it?
Well, I think Todd Bowles will mix it up, but he would definitely blitz Jalen Hurts because Hurts has thrown 8 interceptions against the blitz, which is most in the National Football League. And I think the way to mitigate that and keep the Bucs defense on its heels is just attack through the running game, play power football. You have 3 guys that are two are all pros, Kelsey and Lane Johnson. Another guy who is an alternate for the Pro Bowl in Mailata at left tackle, and 2 very good guards on this team. And you should be able to just move the ball at will between the tackles.
Sal, you mentioned that also, too, that this game will come down to the quarterback that has designed throws and gets the ball out quickly. Now, Baker Mayfield is a veteran. He knows how to read a defense. You mentioned, though, he holds onto the ball a little bit too long. What about Jalen Hurts? Do you think Hurts has regressed, or do you think he can step back here and reassume total control of this offense?
Well, the numbers show that he's not getting better, that's for sure. And the numbers show that Baker Mayfield can get rid of the ball quickly. He did it against Jacksonville. That's why they, quote unquote, you like this, boat raced the Jaguars in that football game.
Right.
I was there, and they actually put it up on the scoreboard that Baker Mayfield was number 2 to Tua in terms of snap to release time that he gets the ball out of his hands in 2.38 seconds. So he can do it. But you have to have a defense that stops him from doing that. And I think the Eagles can do it. Getting Darius Slay back will be a big help. I would play matchup with Evans. I would have Darius Slay travel with Evans. No question. They have to change it up a little bit. I know that's not their tendency, but in this game, listen, these guys get paid a lot of money to coach this team, and we haven't seen the kind of results. So you're asking me what my opinion is.
Right.
It's my opinion based on my study and the study of various other people who I lean on, and I think that that's the answer.
Okay. All right, Sal. An excellent segue by you. You mentioned the coaching now. Let's just touch on this. Nick Sirianni is under immense pressure right now, both in the Philadelphia media and amongst fans, and just, I'm sure, self-imposed. I mean, he's the coach of a team that's managed to go 1-5 after going 10-1, and it's looked very desultory in going 1-5. Now, my question to you is: the pressure, not insults, but the criticism slung at him, is it fair? This is a guy who's taken the Eagles to the playoffs 3 years out of 3, went to a Super Bowl, almost won it, but they are where they are right now. Is Sirianni fairly under the gun here?
Pat, I go back to The Godfather. This is the business we chose. So all criticism, all analysis is fair if it's handled in a fair manner. And I've said to you many times, I said it to you on your radio show for years, I do not like to speculate about coaches losing their jobs, especially in Philadelphia.
Right.
I think it's just a bad move by a reporter if you're not doing good reporting. There is no evidence that I can see whatsoever at all that Nick Sirianni's job is in jeopardy. None. And that would only come from the front office of the football team, and I don't see any evidence of it whatsoever.
Okay.
So people want to speculate, and there's candy out there. There's Bill Belichick. There's Pete Carroll.
You got it right.
Forget it, Pat.
Yeah.
You don't want to bring those guys in here. You don't want to. You just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah, Sal. I mean, I think you're exactly right. I really do. I think sometimes you don't want to descend it. You don't want to be one of those teams that's changing coaches. This guy 3 for 3. I don't know. I think they should. I think it's fixable. All right.
But now here's the thing. Nick Sirianni created some of it by doing what he did with his defensive coordinator, right?
Right.
He takes away play calling duties from Sean Desai and gives it to veteran Matt Patricia. So naturally, people are going to say, well, he claimed it was his offense.
Right.
He claimed it was his decision to make the change to Matt Patricia. It's the old Harry Truman thing. The buck stops here, right? Where else are you going to go? Right. Now you have the dynamic where the only thing left to do, because you're not getting rid of Jalen Hurts, is to get rid of the head coach.
Right.
I mean, to me, it's more likely that you would bring Nick Saban here to coach his old player than you Bill Belichick. This is, to me.
But I think Sirianni sometimes is his own worst enemy. His demeanor sometimes is can be juvenile, and I think he just needs to up his game there. But hey, the pressure's on him for Monday night. All right, Sal, we have a few minutes left. I want to get your take here. Let me rattle off these other 5 games and just give me a 1 or 2 sentence take. What you're looking at, a key to the game, and who you see maybe coming out on top. We'll do it chronologically. The AFC South Bowl, the usual early Saturday game, Cleveland at Houston.
This is C.J. Stroud against Jim Schwartz. That's the bottom line. If Schwartz can induce Stroud to turn the football over, the Browns win. If C.J. Stroud solves the calculus of Jim Schwartz's defense, look out for the Texans.
All right. Ice Bowl number 3, Sal, coming up Saturday night, Miami. Probably the worst possible fit for Miami, going to -5 Kansas City. Miami terribly beat up the 6th seed at the defending Super Bowl champion.
No one is ready for -5 at night. No one. I don't care who you are.
Right.
But especially if you live in the 305 area code.
That's fair. I don't think Miami has much of a chance here. They're too beat up.
No.
That's a tough call. Does the number 7 seed Pittsburgh Steelers have any kind of puncher's chance with Mason Rudolph against a surging Buffalo Bill team?
I don't believe so, Pat. Without TJ Watt, it's tough. TJ Watt is the one player on their defense who could match up athletically with Josh Allen. I think it's going to be very tough for Pittsburgh to go up to Buffalo and win that game.
I do too. I think they'd have to hold it for 40 minutes and run the ball extremely well in order to.
Well, I think, when Sean McDermott came out and said he was very unhappy with Josh Allen's turnovers in the red zone in Miami, I think that was a precursor for how the coaching points went this week.
Right.
Like we're not going to tolerate that nonsense from you in this game.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, Sal, what I think is a marquee game, Green Bay. Jordan Love travels to who's playing extremely well right now for the Green Bay Packers and their bevy of young anonymous wide receivers. Travels to Dallas. You talk about a team with a lot of pressure on it. The Cowboys, the number 2 seed, they've got to make a deep run here. Does it start Sunday against the Packers?
Well, no team has more dysfunction going into the playoffs than the Eagles, but no team has more pressure than the Cowboys. Yeah. No team. At all. And no player has more pressure than Dak Prescott.
I agree. And no coach, I think, Sal, has more pressure than Mike McCarthy, especially given the events of this week.
Yeah. And Jordan Love, he's playing with house money, man.
Yeah.
He is playing with house money. 18 touchdown passes, 1 interception in his last 8 games. He's productive. He's efficient. Oh, man. Yeah. Wouldn't it be something if the Cowboys lost and the Eagles won?
I said that to you did the Eagles actually luck out here as a 5 seed dropping down? Of course, it won't help them next week if they go to San Francisco, but dropping down now to play Tampa as opposed to playing Green Bay.
Well, wait a minute. I don't even know what the scenario is. Get Xander. Maybe the Cuz knows. What is the scenario? Where would the Eagles play next week if the Cowboys lose and the Eagles win?
Well, I mean, I think that if the Cowboys lose, then the Eagles would miss San Francisco because the 7 seed Packers would go to San Francisco. The Cowboys would then play the winner of Rams.
No, the Cowboys are done.
I'm sorry.
The Cowboys lose. The Eagles will play a home game, right?
If the Rams beat the Lions. Yes.
And the Rams are going to be – so it could be Rams at Eagles, Pat.
Well, that last game, Sal, Rams at Lions. Rams are just shocking what they've pulled off, the exact opposite of the Eagles. Do they have a chance going into to play a team that hasn't been to the playoffs or hosted a playoff game in a long time?
Yeah, and I think the Lions secondary probably can't handle what firepower the Rams have. It'll be a very, very emotional game for Matthew Stafford and for Jared Goff.
Right.
And, whatever quarterback responds to the emotion of the moment, that's the quarterback that's going to win the game.
Yeah. That is a fascinating game there.
Oh, yeah.
You guys having switched uniforms. So, all right, Sal Pal, listen, where are you going this weekend? Where can we find you and how do you lead in the matchup show?
Uncle Sal is going to NFL Films, going to tape the NFL matchup show in beautiful downtown Mount Laurel, New Jersey, then drive to the Philly airport and get down to Tampa for Monday Night Football.
Great. Good. Look forward to your reporting there, Sal. You better bring the galoshes. At least you don't need the socks. Just bring the galoshes, and we look very much forward to watching the matchup show and your reporting on Monday night. And I want you back here next week because we're going to have a ton to talk about next week. Hopefully an Eagle victory. We'll see. All right.
I like the Eagles in the game, Pat. 23-20. I like them a little bit, just a little bit.
All right, Sal, thanks very much for joining me tonight, and have a safe trip, and we'll talk to you next week. All right, the great Sal Paolantonio joining me there. Great discussion with him. It always is. Always is. He's just a font of information. All right, listen, we get back here. My close colleague Sean Green's going to join me. We're going to talk some props and some spreads and some very cold weather in Kansas City. We'll do that all next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
I got everything you need.
Anything can happen when you go live.
I got everything you need. No trouble, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene. Yeah, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene.
Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back here to Pro on you. And as always, just a great segment there with the great Sal Paolantonio. Appreciate that very much from Sal. Now we bring this gentleman on here, a star in his own right, the host of the Sports Gambling Podcast. That would be the great Sean Green. Sean, how you doing, pal?
Doing great. You know, Eagles survived the regular season, got into the playoffs. We're 0-0. Nothing can stop us.
I think I'm not sure that's true. Now, that's probably the first untrue thing you've said all season long. You're not starting off very well here, playoff-wise. But I'll ask you. You give me your take here. A team that goes 10-1 and all of a sudden goes 1-5. How do you see the Eagles coming into the playoffs? And how do the wise guys see them in terms of how deep a run the Eagles might make?
Yeah, you know, I think it's interesting. I think they matched up against the one team that is a good start for them. Because if they can beat the Bucs, then maybe they get some confidence back, and maybe we can talk about going on a bit of a run. But yeah, it's interesting. You would assume no one's betting on the Eagles. There's no way. But the line opened at 2.5, and it got bet up because, sharp action, whatever bigger bets were coming in on the Eagles. It's now up to -3 on most places, which isn't a huge move, but it is a decent enough move. I think, if you follow the Eagles or if you've seen their collapse, certainly a lot of people are out on them. But on the other side, you look at this Tampa Bay Bucks team who Baker Mayfield, they didn't score a touchdown against the Carolina Panthers. So it's not like this Bucks team is firing on all cylinders, and their quarterback Baker is pretty banged up. So I think they kind of got the perfect matchup round one, and especially considering all those dumb injuries they got against the Giants, the fact that they are playing on Monday night gives a guy like AJ Brown, gives Jalen Hurts with the finger an extra day, 2 days. I mean, if they had to play on Saturday, I think it's a different handicap. But the fact that it's Monday night, I do think helps them.
You mentioned those two injuries, which are keys in the passing game. Sal Paolantonio stressed strongly that the way for the Eagles to win this game is to run the ball. Do you see any props? Is that evidenced anywhere as far as placing an emphasis on DeAndre Swift going into this game Monday night?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's certainly. If it was up to Eagles fans, we'd be pounding the run so much more. I haven't seen any sort of crazy adjustment. I mean, DeAndre Swift is at 59.5 rushing yards, his over/under, which is kind of what he's been sitting at for most of the season. He was dealing with an illness last week, didn't play. Kenny Gainwell is kind of interesting too because they do like to work him in. So he's interesting for some. I would almost rather take Kenny Gainwell's over/under. His over than DeAndre Swift, but we'll see. Swift had a great game early in the season against the Bucs. Hopefully they just run that back, but we'll see.
Yeah. So the number is sitting around 3.5 right now. Philadelphia, the favorite. Yeah, the Eagles just keep getting listed as a favorite, Sean, and they keep getting
losing games.
Yeah, I know, but do you think that does the public like the Eagles? I mean, as you mentioned and Sal mentioned, Tampa Bay is not, I wouldn't call them overly formidable. I think the Eagles really got a good draw here. Do you think most of the money will come on to Philadelphia by Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's interesting, right? Because who is betting on this Eagles team? But then again, on the other side, you have to be confident in the Bucs on the other side to get down on it. You can kind of compare it to last year, if you recall. The Cowboys limped into the playoffs. They had an ugly division loss against the Commanders there the week before in a game they kind of needed, much like the Eagles did against the Giants, where they didn't need to win to get in, but certainly would have liked it for seeding. Right now, though, it does seem like 63% of the handle, 61% of the bets on the Eagles. So we'll see. I mean, if you see that 3.5, a lot of places, maybe people talk themselves into the Bucs, but it's almost exact same situation last year, and the Cowboys came in and really blew out the Bucs. I don't know if that happens here, but and I don't know. The Bucs offense isn't looking too good either.
I know that. I agree with you about that. All right. You mentioned the Cowboys. Sal talked about them too as having probably as much, if not more, pressure on them than the Eagles going into this playoff run, because it's about time Dallas makes a deep run. Now, I noticed on most DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Dallas plus 750. So the betting public not thrilled with Dallas' chances to make it, I think, to the big game.
Yeah, it's they have we did a little rundown on our show, Sports Gambling Podcast, of the teams with the worst record in the playoffs since 1995, and Cowboys are right up there. Because as much as they've had success in the regular season, they haven't gotten to a conference championship game since 1995. And it's tough to, certainly they look good in the regular season once again. Very tough out at home, 8-0 at home here. But you look at the, as far as betting splits, Dak 1-5 against the spread in playoff games. So when they do get the wins, they certainly don't get the covers. And I think that's the public's a little hesitant here.
Yeah, I know. Sean Green, presented by the great folks at Live Hotel and Casino in Philadelphia. All right, Sean, let's take a look at a couple of these games here. Obviously, you like Philadelphia. That's nobody. But I mean, let me check out a couple of these other games here, according to the Sports Gambling Podcast here. Please, everybody, check this website out. Sports Gambling Podcast. Their NFL picks are right there. Kansas City, I'm surprised it's only a 4 or so number, 4.5 number. I don't know how Miami keeps it this close. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I have Kansas City laying the points. I mean, you just look at the Miami Dolphins when they've gone on the road against good teams and or even just kind of like above average teams at the Bills, neutral site against the Chiefs, even the Eagles they lost. Like they really struggle on the road. They have a tremendous amount of injuries they're dealing with on the defensive side. I think the reason the spread hasn't gotten higher is it's tough to predict a lot of points in this game. One, the Chiefs offense, I mean, they haven't put up 30 points since October. You got to go all the way back to October 29th for the Chiefs. So to cover a bigger spread, it means you have to get some points. And everyone's talking about the weather. You know, it's going to feel like negative 30 out there. When the cold gets that bad, and if there's any sort of wind, it really messes with the scoring, messes with the totals, makes it really hard to catch the ball. So, I mean, if you're talking props, I mean, the unders on some of these player props, I don't think have adjusted enough. But I would say that's why the spread hasn't gotten up to 6 points, to your point. But again, obviously everyone knows Dolphins struggle in cold weather. Historically, Tua, Mike McDaniel, none of them have really shown up.
So struggle in cold weather. They probably struggle in death-inducing weather.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would guess so. All right, that line in Dallas, Green Bay is kind of held, Sean, 7.5 thereabouts. I see you're looking to get 8.5 with Green Bay. But the Cowboys, I think it's a big number, Sean. 7.5. Packers are playing very well offensively. They've got some talent. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I think the Packers can hang around. I think you look at some of the trends as far as a first-time quarterback making a playoff start, generally not very favorable. The times where it is kind of closer to 50-50 is when they're a road underdog and they're catching a decent amount of points, like is the case here. You got Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is 100% healthy, and he has led the league in rushing yards since he returned week 14. How do you beat the Cowboys? You pound the rock. You keep the offense off the field. You create some turnovers with Dak Prescott. So I think the path is there for the Green Bay Packers. Now, there is some late injury news. Jair Alexander tweaked something. He's listed as questionable now. So we'll see. If he doesn't go, it's going to make the Packers defense pretty tough, their job. But I think at the very least, you know, they're down 10, even 13 late, getting a backdoor touchdown. I feel a lot better than laying a big number.
I think this is a classic game. Sal mentioned the pressure that they're going to be under. I think it's a classic game where if Green Bay hangs in early and at halftime it's 14-10 or 14-13, something like that, I think the Packers are going to – the Cowboys, are really going to start to feel it. I think that could be a big upset there. Last game I want to mention, I want you to talk to me about is the Sunday night game because I think it's fascinating. Matt Stafford going back to Detroit to face Jared Goff. The Rams, like I said, they're the anti-Eagles.
Yes.
How to go 7-1 their last 8 games. Their offense is humming along. Detroit, though, good, talented team. How do you see this one?
Well, I feel like I was high on the Rams coming into the season. Everyone said I was crazy, and then they got off to a bad start, maybe look like an idiot. And now I'm looking every week. I'm looking a little bit smarter for being in on this Rams team. I think to me, there's a couple of interesting things here. One, I really struggle to find a way that Detroit's defense is going to slow down Matt Stafford in this stadium with those weapons. Maybe I think if you're Detroit, you need a big play from Aiden Hutchinson. You need that defensive line to create some pressures because that's one weakness on the Rams offensive side is their sacks they've given up. On the other side for Detroit, I mean, you know, Dan Campbell playing all his guys. Sure, I get it. I'm a football guy as well. I love caffeine. I'm a big Starbucks guy like Dan Campbell there, but I would like Detroit's chances a lot better if they had Sam Laporta because Rams are right up there. 8 touchdowns allowed to the tight end position. And if you could get production from a guy like Sam Laporta, I feel like you're going to kind of miss that. I think this is, you know, it's a dome game. It's a shootout. I like, it feels like it's going to be a close competitive game. I'll take the Rams because they're getting the free 3 points. You might even be able to get a decently priced 3.5 out there. I think that's where you want to be. Because I would be surprised if either team really puts it on. the other team, and especially, just both paces of these offense, I think they can score relatively quick. And Detroit needs to really run the ball. And the Rams, besides Aaron Donald, not a lot of big names, although they do have the kid who's in the mix there for Defensive Rookie of the Year. If I'm the Lions, I pound the rock with David Montgomery, set up the play action, and kind of hope for the best with Jared Goff. But I really think this Rams offense is going to be able to move the ball.
All right, that'll be a fascinating game. Where does everybody find Sean Green this weekend if they want to get any last minute tips on how to dress warmly in Kansas City?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're going to see, like Brady or Mac Jones. Remember when Mac Jones did the scuba suit? I think we might be seeing that from Tua. I mean, he's a Hawaii kid. I really struggle there for him.
I know.
Check me out, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, wherever you get your podcast. Just type in Sports Gambling Podcast. And we are doing a free playoff challenge, free to enter. You make your picks throughout the whole playoffs. A lot of fun giving away some sponsored credits here for a company we work with. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NFL playoff to get in there. It's completely free. It's super fun. So thanks for the time, Pat. Appreciate it.
All right, Sean Green, thanks a lot for you taking the time. Appreciate that. We'll talk to you next week. Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast joining me when we get back. Anthony Gargano is going to join us because we'll break down this game even further and get his opinion on whether the Eagles can, in fact, make a deep playoff run. That's all next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
I got everything you need.
Anything can happen when you go live.
I got everything you need. There's no trouble, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene. Yeah, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene.
Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
And welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. And Sandy, let's bring this gentleman up here. Very, very happy to welcome him to the show. That would be the longtime radio host in Philadelphia from The Fanatic and from WIP, and the host of The Fellas on Fox Sports Radio, Anthony Gargano. Anthony, how you been? Did we lose Anthony? Anthony looks very frozen to me. So it looks like we've lost him for just a second. Xander, I'm sure we'll get him back. Let's get this guy back up here. The foibles of cable. So hopefully we can bring Anthony back. Don't forget, too, coming up at the top of the hour, Dick Vermeil going to join me. We're going to talk about, obviously, the coaching aspect of this and where Nick Sirianni is going to come in here and the pressure that's on him. Hopefully, time permitting, too, I could talk to the coach about Bill Belichick and his leaving the Patriots after 24 years. Vermeil has a lot to fall back on. 15-year coach in the National Football League. I won 126 games as an NFL head coach. Not easy to do. So we'll see if we can get Anthony back. I tell you, that those games Sean Green was talking about right there. One game we didn't mention, the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. Buffalo is a 10-point favorite in that game. And that's because there's a 14-point difference between the two quarterbacks. So, I mean, I think if Josh Allen's on his game, I think Buffalo certainly wins that game with minimal fanfare. All right, let's try this guy again, Zana. How about it? Anthony Gargano, how are you?
Hey, buddy, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened, Pat.
All right, I bet you we'll see. It's probably cable. You're probably 5 minutes late with your cable payment there, Anthony. You know what that means. All right.
I'm still one of the rare Comcast people. I still have my Comcast.
All right. Listen, I got a lot of things for you now. We got a little compressed time here. Let's get right to it. Is there a path you see for the Eagles to make, based on how they've played recently? Is there a path for them to make a deep postseason run?
I mean, we're talking Super Bowl. I don't see it. I mean, the biggest problem is defense, right? Like, listen, if they get the offense, I think they can get the offense figured out and get back to where they were rolling. I mean, at times this year, they have been doing that. So I don't think that's a stretch. But, can this defense, particularly the back end and that back seven, not get exploited by some of the quarterbacks that are in the NFC? I have my doubts. I think that's ultimately what's going to kill them.
Well, certainly the defense is a problem. How do you think it fell apart so, I want to say quickly, really over the last 6 weeks? What do you think it was that all of a sudden caused the team to go from 10-1 to go 1-5 in its last 6? Is it just the players on the field, or do you think the coaching shakeup? How did you see it falling out?
Well, listen, I think it's twofold. One, I think defensively, the front wore down, right? Like they were, you could see after that gauntlet that a lot of those guys were spent when they faced all those teams. And I think that took a lot out of them. And this team lives by its front, right? Like, you need to pressure the quarterback because of the back end. Slay gets hurt, right? Safeties get exposed. The new guys come in and they don't really, it's not what we'd hope for, right? Like, you think Byard would make a little bit of a difference, that maybe, that Shaq would make a little bit of a difference. It really never happened. And then offensively, to your point, I just think predictability is real. Like when you're talking about fans guessing the next play, I mean, you got to look in the mirror. There's some issues there. I think offensively they were not as potent as they were last year, and I think ultimately that came down to get them. I mean, look at that offense at times. I mean, all of a sudden they couldn't handle a blitz. That's what was so puzzling.
I know, and that is true. And I talked about that a lot with Sal, and he mentioned it on the show tonight. Was you can look for Tampa to blitz during the national anthem. I think that is clearly going to happen a great deal. All right, so let's talk about Jalen Hurts for a minute. I asked Sal if he saw a regression in Hurts' play. I'll ask you the same question. I thought this guy was really earmarked for stardom, and he still is. He's still a top-flight NFL quarterback. But clearly, as you mentioned, the spontaneity seems to have gone out of this offense. How much do you lay on the feet of number one?
I would lay more on the coaching staff, but and Jalen definitely has culpability. We break down the film, Baldy and I, for our NFL show on the All City Network, and we break down all that film deeply. He's been missing guys. He's been late. He's been missing guys. Their offense hasn't clicked the way it is. Some of it's play calling, like we talked about, but he hasn't really played that well. And I've seen him play better. I've seen him be more accurate. I've seen him recognize things quicker. Right? He just doesn't look as dominant as he was last year. That defense, and he was a bigger part of the run game too. And I think that also helped him. Right? That also helped when he was a bigger part of the run game. That helps the pass, right? Because that's just going to buy you more time. He's not fared well against the blitz, like we've talked about. part of it's coaching, but it's also part of it's him recognizing.
Yeah. 8 picks against the blitz this year by Jalen Hurts, worst in the NFL, or the most in the NFL. And I think, as you mentioned, Todd Bowles, the Bucs love the blitz anyway. They are going to bring the house. The Eagles have got to run the ball. Do you see Philadelphia committing to that Monday night?
Listen, of course they have to run the ball. And, in the past, they haven't been shy to do it. In the past, they've run the ball. It's not like that this coaching staff has always been averse to the run game. And, it's been weird because the way the season started, the way Swift was such a big weapon.
I know.
And it was weird. And I don't know if that's Brian Johnson, who's the OC, who goes away quicker, or if it's the offense itself with Nick, where they'll go back to certain plays. But they've kind of abandoned ship. If the run game's not working early, they kind of get away from it, and that can't happen. We saw. It's funny. 2 years ago, right? This was the House of Horrors in the playoff game. Tampa. It was Brady, but really, the Tampa defense just harassed Jalen. He had one of his worst games. That was one of the reasons why people were suddenly unsure about what Jalen can be. And then, of course, last year he's stellar, and they go to the Super Bowl. But it's odd that they're going back to that same place. So it's they're going to blitz him.
Of course, Swift's best game of the year was in Tampa in Week 4. So there is the Eagles should learn from recent history. All right, now a word about the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, because the microwave is turned on, and on a guy that has taken this team to the playoffs in all of the 3 years that he's been the head coach, including a very, very close Super Bowl loss. And yet, Anthony, the pressure is on him right now, full blast. How much do you think, let me ask you this, do you think that Nick Sirianni is capable of hitting the right switches to turn this around for Philadelphia Monday night?
Yeah, I do. Listen, I thought he was bright. I liked a lot of the stuff that Nick brought to the table. And I'm not going to just say he forgot how to coach over the last 6 games and, fire him. I know there's a lot of pressure that if they don't win Monday night, that some change needs to happen, especially with the way the landscape of the NFL has been between Carroll and Belichick and all the movement. I would guess that the Eagles would say, "Hey, look, we got to replace our coordinators, and we'll start there." But I don't think this is a situation where all of a sudden he can't coach. Yeah. I mean, I listen. I believe in Sirianni. I think he's got to. I think he's got to mature a little bit, become a little more seasoned.
I think you're right about that, Anthony. I think you're right. The maturity thing. I think he's some ways he's his own worst enemy. Right? We all think of the classic NFL coaches, Tom Landry with the fedora and the sport jacket and the tie, and this guy always looks like he forgot to shave. And he's going back and forth with opposing fans. And I think when the going gets really tough and when the heat gets turned up full blast, that comes back and adversely impacts his perception. Do you agree with that?
I mean, to a point. I think the season piece of it, I think, Pat, that's more of it. The youthful stuff, I think that's his DNA. I mean, honestly, I think he's a fiery guy. And I think that's partly what fuels him. So him jabbering and all that stuff, I just think that's kind of who he is. That's just part of his DNA. He's just going to get back to it. And I'll be honest with you, I thought he should have took the play calling back. Yeah. I think, it should have been, Mike McCarthy did that with the Cowboys. And I thought Nick should have took the play calling back as this thing started to reel down the stretch and said, "I'm the head coach. I'll fix it."
All right. Well, we'll see how he does it. All right, AG, I got 30 seconds left here. How do you see Monday night? Do you see Philadelphia moving on to a possible date in San Francisco next week?
Man, I don't. I'm worried. I really am. I think it's going to be a tough game. Yeah. And I worry about the back end. I think we're going to be sweating if they win.
How about that? Yeah, because by the back end, you mean Mike Evans.
Secondary. Evans, Godwin, Cole, again, Kate Otten. I just worry about that.
All right. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Now, tell me, you mentioned the show you do with Brian Bollinger. Where do people find Anthony Gargano, and where can we keep track of what you're up to?
Thanks, Pat. It's All City Network. It's the All NFL podcast, the Meat Locker with Baldy and myself.
Yeah.
And soon in April, we'll be doing our show on PHLY. So I always love you, Pat. You do a great job. You're a good football man.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Love to have you back here, and look forward, and congratulations and best of luck to you in the new pursuits.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Hopefully we get to continue the playoffs. So.
All right, Anthony. Thanks very much. Great, Anthony Gargano joining me here on This Week in Pro Football. When we get back, Coach is going to join me, Coach Vermeil, and we are going to talk about, obviously, playoff coaching in the crucible that is the NFL playoffs. We're going to do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
And welcome back here This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you, and I am very, very privileged to be joined by this gentleman, Hall of Famer, 126 wins in a 15-year career as a head coach and two-time Sporting News Coach of the Year. That would be Dick Vermeil. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing okay for an old man, thank you.
Well, that's good. Good for you. All right, Coach, it is playoff time. You have been through this crucible, and what I'd like to do in this discussion is to rely on your experiences as a coach. And I want to start with the fact that the local team, 10-1, coming off a Super Bowl appearance, defending NFC champion, they're 10-1, they're winning tough games, and all of a sudden the wheels appear to come off. How does that work with a team where they seem to be firing on all cylinders for 11 games, then all of a sudden everything goes wrong?
Well, there's never any one answer, okay, that can answer the complexity of what has taken place. The defense is nowhere close to what it was last year. It was playing pretty well. It played excellent against Miami Dolphins, who had scored a ton of points the week before. I just think sometimes the process that you've been using has to keep improving to keep it going forward. And, I don't fault the scheme or coaches. I think sometimes things build up. First players' attitudes start thinking, hey, we're pretty good. All we have to do is line up and play. That's wrong today. You have to line up and play well. And they haven't been able to do that, even in their wins against, Buffalo. Buffalo was over 500-something yards. When they came from behind and beat the Cowboys were over 400-something yards.
Right.
When then they upset the Chiefs at the end of the game.
Right.
Some of those things that happened in those games send a message that what might be transpiring in the future or the rest of the season, and they started going downhill, and they haven't been able to get out of it, get the one win against the Giants in the first Giants game, and they could have lost that one.
I know, and they've
lost their edge. Obviously, me included, have had them overestimated in terms of how good they're going to be. Maybe the talent level isn't quite what we thought it was going to be with the new additions to the people they lost on defense. They lost a lot of guys.
Right.
And a couple of the draft choices haven't been outstanding. They've been making a contribution, but it isn't a big contribution.
All right.
So there's a lot of things. You lose two fine coordinators, offensive coordinator, goes to Baltimore, proves he's a very fine coach.
Sure.
He wins 9 games in the first season, taking over a losing football team with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Did a good job.
Yeah.
Defensive coordinator goes to Arizona, improves that situation, and has got a chance somewhere down the road to be a real good football team with Stroud at quarterback position.
That's true.
And sometimes when you replace those people that leave, you get an upgrade. Sometimes they're not quite as good as the people left, and sometimes they need a year or two to catch up.
Right.
We don't know where we are right now.
And that's always the bane, isn't it, of successful teams, because it is their assistants who get poached, as opposed to middling teams, 7 and 10 teams. You're not looking for their offensive coordinator, right?
I think many times owners make a mistake by hiring based on the success of that team.
Right.
And what they do is they end up hiring a system.
Right.
And maybe the system doesn't, when they bring them in with the new coach, doesn't bring a great process along with it.
Sure enough.
And a great depth and leadership, and it sort of backfires on them. There's been, Sean McVay was a great hire. Who would have guessed he would be as successful as he is? He probably did a better job of coaching this year than he did when they won it all.
I think that's an excellent point. Now, let me ask you this, Coach. In your experience, is there such a thing as a tired football team? The Eagles have played 37 games the last 2 years because of their successful run last year, and it is a veteran-laden team. Could the Eagles simply be tired after playing all of that football, and especially playing a number of close games in their first 11 games this year?
I don't believe that. Everybody else plays a lot of games. All these teams, some of these teams have played a lot of games too. I don't think the Eagles are using that as an excuse. I've read it in the media. I don't believe I've heard Nick Sirianni say my team's tired, that's why we're losing. Okay. It's easy to go that way. I don't believe in it. When players used to come to me once in a while and say, Coach, I'm really getting tired. You know what I would say? Then spend more time in the offseason and come here better shape to recover quickly so you can light up and earn your salary next Sunday. Okay. I'm very cold in regard to that. There's no excuse for getting tired unless you're not working hard enough. Now, there are programs in the modern systems of coaching and the limits the union puts on him that there can be a deterioration because you overprotect him, concerned about injuries. So there's more walkthroughs and more of this. Players don't get better in walkthroughs, especially defensive linemen and especially quarterbacks. And you can end up doing too much of that, and pretty quick, the physical explosion ability and the stamina leaves, especially the defensive lineman first.
Okay.
I'm old-fashioned.
I love that.
There's a couple teams that work old-fashioned right now that are awfully good. Okay. I know what they're doing. Okay.
I don't mind old-fashioned at all, Coach. Don't mind it at all. Speaking about the head coach, and again, relying on your experience now, Nick Sirianni is coming into this playoff markedly different than last year. A ton of pressure on him, a cacophony of sound, questioning the decisions that he has made. How does a coach, in preparing for a playoff run, how did you do it? How do you shut that all off and just try and focus on getting this ship in the right direction?
Well, Pat, when I was at UCLA, there was another office close to me that included a great coach named,
John Wooden. Right.
John Wooden told me early in my campaign, my first big job, Coach, he says, what they write about you that's really good in the media and they say on the radio talk shows is probably not all true. What they say about you that is not really good in either the radio show or the newspapers is probably not all true. Right. So you don't need the distraction. He says, if I were you, I did this especially in my career and got going. Don't read the paper or listen to talk shows during the season. He says that all it can be is a distraction. Right. Now believe this or not, Pat, I stayed with that rule. Everything he asked me to do in the 2 years I was around him, 3 years actually,
right,
I held on to.
Right.
A lot smarter than me and more successful than any coach in America. Right. And if he gives you that common sense responses and to guide you, you better listen. And that's what when they were, better than I, Pat, very seldom they hire a coach to take over a good organization.
Yeah.
We take over the Eagles, it's the worst organization in football. We take over the Rams, it's the worst organization in football. Hell, my first year at the Rams, we lost 8 in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you listen to the media and you listen to the radio and you read that stuff, it's a drain on you emotionally. None of us like to be criticized that critically, you know. So I just stayed away from it. Even today, I read or watch almost nothing that my name's in it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be distorted thinking I'm better than I am. I don't want to be distorted thinking I'm worse than I am. Okay.
That's an excellent philosophy. But, of course, everything written about you now is pretty positive. I'll say that much. But I understand what you're saying. Coach, let me ask you now about the quarterback. It's always the glamour position. It's the linchpin, usually, of how a team plays. You've dealt in your professional experience with guys, very, very confident guys, Kurt Warner, Trent Green, Ron Jaworski. As a coach, you'd be able to sense if a quarterback is either, number one, struggling with mechanics, or two, losing confidence. Do you see either one of those manifesting with Jalen Hurts?
I think he struggled a little bit from not having the overall support staff he had a year ago, whether it's coaching, teammates, scheme, pluses or minuses, and these kinds of things. It's obvious he's not what he was. He's 12 points below his quarterback efficiency rating last year.
Right. Okay,
yards per pass attempt is down. Percentage completion is slightly up. Okay, and those kind of things. They are not the football team offensively that they were. They're still 7th or 8th best offensive football. You know, they're not that bad. Their standards were so high because they played so well. And it's hard to pinpoint. The most obvious thing is the only thing really, really drastically different is the coordinator's gone.
Yeah.
That's the most drastic. Now, whether he made that kind of contribution or didn't make that kind of contribution, no one can say.
Right.
But the end result, he's not playing as well as he did. Now, maybe the offensive line isn't playing as well as it did either. You know, the defense certainly is not. So they're not on the field like in the same kind of an atmosphere and an environment that they were last year when they're banging heads and knocking people down. You know, they're not doing that right now. Their defense has dropped almost to the bottom from what it was.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think they gave up fewer points of football than anybody a year ago.
Yeah.
They're 30th in the league right now.
Yeah.
So it's more than any one thing, but it's a combination of a lot of things.
Coach, in terms of the game Monday night, I've always thought that a team, like a play, just a set of downs or even a play, say defensively like you're talking about, a fumble recovery, a pick six, a big sack, some sort of play, can all of a sudden a team can exhale and turn the momentum right back on. Have you seen that in your experience as a coach? You turn on just one play, two plays, and the 10-1 Eagles could all of a sudden resurface?
Yeah, they could. They could respond. It's gonna be hard from where they've been. You know, they've lost to 4 losing teams.
Right.
Playoff teams don't normally lose.
Right.
Sometimes losing to one losing team can hurt your playoff situation.
Right.
But when you lose to 4, but you know, the Eagles have beaten 6 playoff teams.
Yeah.
So, you know, where are they?
Yeah, I know.
What are they?
Yeah.
The first half of the league season, you know, they were as good as anybody in football.
Right.
Then they go through the evolution of downfall, even in winning, beating playoff teams. That they were fortunate to win because some explosive plays gave them the victory in the fourth quarter.
Right.
When the numbers dictated that the other team should win.
Sure, fair enough.
So, you know, I know this in a single game. It's happened to me a number of times, especially if you have a great special teams player.
Right.
You're standing on a sideline, you're going to lose. I can think of games. A number of games in 5 years at Kansas City had Dante Hall returning punts and kickoffs.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Sure.
All of a sudden, we go behind with 3 minutes to go, and they kick off, and he scores. We're back ahead.
Right.
Or we finally stopped the team, and they punt us the ball. And he returns it for a touchdown.
Yes.
Or brings it out to the 50-yard line.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, everyone goes like this.
Yeah.
There are players on the Eagles team that can do that too.
Yeah.
There are players. That little punt returner they have, he's a dynamic little player.
Yeah, he is, and he runs forward. I love it. He runs straight
He's
up.
done it a couple times.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, wake you up. But it's hard for a head coach to turn around, chew everybody's ass out, and spark them up. All of a sudden, you go play better.
Right.
You know, I don't think I've ever been successful doing that. At halftime, a couple times, I think maybe we shook them up a little bit. and they went out and played better than they were playing. But it more or less when a team gets a spark during the ball game and reignites momentum, some player does something special.
All right. Coach, how do you see it Monday night? Do you see that the Philadelphia can put aside this miserable run they've been on and start a playoff run here?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're a better team than Tampa. Yeah, they're a better team than Tampa Bay. And Eagles have only scored 5 more points than they've given up, okay? Yeah. And Tampa Bay has scored 23 more points than they've given up. Yeah. Tampa Bay is playing better defense than the Eagles play. Eagles play better offense. So it's going to be who the best team is game day. I think overall the Eagles are a better football team. Right. And I think we need the ignition of great competition to aspire a team that's been in the Super Bowl, all those kind of things.
Right.
They need a little extra to all of a sudden get that intense feeling. Boy, I think the playoff will excite them.
Right.
Be in that atmosphere again. It'll remind them what they were.
All right.
And I will play better than we've played. I promise you we'll play better than we've played the last 6-7 weeks. I really believe that. But it won't be easy. I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield, okay?
Yeah.
He's been a quarterback that's been in the situation wasn't conducive to quarterback success.
Sure
he's overcome it here in Tampa Bay. He really has done some good things.
Yeah. And he's got a rocket arm. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and he's
denying his arm.
He's a tough guy.
Yeah.
And yes, he doesn't have the talent that our quarterback has.
Right.
Jalen has unlimited talent.
Right.
But all those guys with unlimited talent need the support of other people.
Right. Coach, one last question before I let you go, and thank you very much for taking all this time. And that is just a comment from you. And Bill Belichick steps down today after a 24-year run as the head coach of the New England Patriots. I mentioned at the top of the show how in those 24 years, the other 31 NFL teams hired 163 coaches.
Yeah.
While he was there. Just give me your thoughts on Belichick, and are you surprised that he wants to continue as an NFL head coach?
Okay, I mean, I'll answer maybe not in your order of question. I will say this: I'm not surprised he wants to continue. I was surprised they let him go. I was surprised. I think the loyalty ought to be deeper than that.
Right.
Okay, that's just me, old-fashioned again.
Right.
No better football coach in the history of the game, not Lombardi or any of these guys. No one has done a better job than he's done. I wish I had more Belichick in me, and maybe I'd have won more ball games. And
I'll say,
people say, well, he had Brady. Well, when I won, I had Jaworski. When I won, I had Kurt Warner. When I won, I had Trent Green. We all need great quarterbacks to win.
Right.
He went beyond just winning. He went beyond just winning. And I just think, one time I heard an owner told me the biggest mistake he ever made was firing Tom Coughlin. Okay. So he went to New York Giants and won 2 Super Bowls.
2 Super Bowls, right.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's a mistake, but I'm a fan of Robert Kraft. I've always liked him. He's always been respectful with me and treated me with respect, and it's appreciated. But I think we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes, and they'll hire someone good. I'll bet it's Vrabel, personally. That's,
Yeah, I think he'll be in demand. I think Coach Vrabel will be in demand. I think the Patriots actually will take a look at him.
They got a good coach there coaching the offense right now, Bill Young. He proved he could coach at Houston, and he goes to Penn State. He won there. He goes to Houston. He took them to the playoffs. They never won it. Then they had a bad year, and they got rid of him. And they haven't been the same since. Maybe they're going to come back. But I think he's an excellent football coach.
I tell you. But we'll see. It's going to be fascinating, Coach, to see what happens with Coach Belichick, because I think
very few coaches end their career winning.
Yeah.
People asked me early when I left the Rams, when we won it all, I retired. One of the reasons, not a strong reason, but one of them was I wanted to be a head coach that had success and finished his career not getting fired. But you just stop and think, hey, Tom Landry was fired. Okay? The greatest coaches. Or they ask you to leave, So I've got a Coach of the Year trophy back here. The very first one I got in '79. Half the guys who were Coach of the Year were fired not many years after that. So
that's fair. That is fair. But I think you had a pretty good run, Coach, and I'm really happy. And
very fortunate to have great owners.
Yeah.
And great coaching staff. And like Philadelphia, great city to coach football. As long as you don't read the paper, listen.
That's true. As long as you don't read the paper or turn the radio on. That's certainly true. All right. Well, listen, Coach Vermeil, thank you very much for taking all this time. It was great having you on, a great talking football.
Okay, Pat. Yeah, always a pleasure. You take care. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. And Happy New Year to you, the great Dick Vermeil there, a Hall of Famer, and some great insight from him that I hope you enjoyed here on This Week in Pro Football. That'll do it for tonight's show. Enjoy all the football this weekend. Maybe not that Peacock game if you don't want to pay that money. I certainly understand that. But should be some great football. And then next week, divisional weekend, 4 great games as we move up the pyramid towards the Super Bowl. We'll see how the home team does when they travel to Tampa on Monday night. We'll talk to Sal Paolantonio about that and many other NFL luminaries next week. Thank you very much to Xander Krause for producing. Thank you for watching. I think Philadelphia wins Monday night. I've been saying the Eagles have been winning. I've been saying it every week for the last 6 weeks. I've been wrong 5 out of 6 times. I think Coach Vermeil's right. I think they're the better team. Just a play or two, I think. And as Coach Vermeil mentioned, the fact that it's the playoff atmosphere, I think the players will respond to that. They just need a play or two to exhale, and then I think they win the game. We'll see what happens, and we'll talk to you next week on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.